What if everyone in your organization could save an hour in time per day by being more efficient and productive at things like writing emails, creating reports and presentations, taking meeting notes, and following up on tasks? Stay tuned in this video as I dive into Copilot for Microsoft 365 and how it can take your productivity to the next level. All right, thanks everyone for joining me today. I'm Jeremy Wallace, Principal Cloud Architect for Safari Micro. And today we're going to be talking about Copilot for Microsoft 365. Quick agenda here. We're going to talk briefly about generative AI, why you should care, and then we'll talk about Copilot for Microsoft 365, how it works, and what some of the results have been from using Copilot. And then we'll spend most of our time doing a live demo. So the fun part is what we'll spend most of the time focusing on today. So do stick around for that. We're just going to talk about some of the basics, setting it up for that at the beginning. And so some of you may know a lot about generative AI, some of you may not. So we're just going to try to cover those bases, and then we'll dive into the actual live demo so you can see how Copilot for Microsoft 365 works. So real quick about me. I've been working in the Microsoft Cloud for over a decade, having migrated thousands of users to Microsoft 365 and Azure. And I thoroughly enjoy educating organizations to better understand Microsoft technologies and how it can benefit their endeavors and technology initiatives. If you want free tips and tricks and advice regarding Azure and the Microsoft Cloud, I invite you to follow me on LinkedIn and on the MS Cloud Bros and Safari Micro YouTube channels. Right. So Copilot. So if you're attending this webinar, obviously there is a desire to understand about Copilot for Microsoft 365. So what is it? Well, Copilot is Microsoft's generative artificial intelligence. So to answer that, I need to make sure you understand what generative AI is. Some of you may know quite a bit about it. Some of you may not know anything at all. So let's briefly touch on generative AI. Generative AI is a branch of AI that can create new content or data from scratch based on some input or guidance. For example, generative AI can write text, compose music, design images, or synthesize speech. Generative AI uses deep learning models such as neural networks to learn from large amounts of data and generate unique outputs that are similar to or relevant to the data in a way that feels natural to you. So essentially, you think tons and tons of data that it's learning against, and it's able to find the connections between those data. So it identifies more than just like a search engine that's able to look for data. It understands the relationships between that data. And so it's able to present something to you that feels like natural language or a natural outcome because it's able to understand those connections when you ask it something. So generative AI is a powerful and innovative technology that can augment human creativity and productivity, as well as enable new applications and scenarios. So actually what you see on the screen, for instance, is an AI generated image that I asked Copilot to create by I told it, generate an image representing generative artificial intelligence. And it was able to come up with these 4 different variations. And so I enlarged one of them for you. I actually then took that AI generated image from Copilot and uploaded it back into the Copilot prompt. And I asked it, hey, describe what's in this image. And it was able to provide me this description. The image you shared presents a futuristic cityscape at night, characterized by its towering skyscrapers with sleek designs, all aglow with bright blue lights. The scene is alive with the activity of advanced technology, as evidenced by the presence of flying vehicles and modern cranes. So you can see it's able to create not only unique works of art, it's also able to generate a unique description of it by understanding what's in that artwork. So this is not just some canned information that it's looking for, when you Googled something or some type of search index where it's just trying to pull existing information out there. This is new stuff that it's generative AI. So what made generative AI most popular to people is ChatGPT. It generated this huge hype for the new era of generative AI. And most, if not all of you at this point, have had some level of interaction with Gen AI, either personally or professionally. But why should you care? Is Gen AI just a novelty? Does it bring any real value? Is anyone actually adopting it? Well, the answer is yes. We haven't experienced diffusion at this scale in the tech industry before. This graph here shows it charts out the reach and time of various technologies and services to get to 100 million users. Mobile phones took 16 years to get to 100 million users. Internet, 7 years to get to 100 million users. Facebook, 4.5 years to 100 million users. Chat GPT, 3 months. In 3 months' time, generative AI had touched 100 million users. That's an astonishing rate of reach. So we're living through a momentous platform shift. History has taught us that technology drives economic growth, and the pace of change is constantly accelerating. So for the last decade, technology spend has grown faster than economic growth. Historically, tech is an economic growth multiplier. From 4 times in the 1800s when technology such as the telegraph was invented, to now over 20 times a multiplier over the last century when things like PCs, internet, and smartphone were invented. So experts say AI will be the next leg up for the world's economic growth. So this is world impacting. So it's important for us to understand how we can utilize it. The platform shift to AI is well underway. Just as customers turn to Microsoft to help them make the shift to remote, flexible work, they're now turning to Microsoft to help them understand how this new era of AI will change work yet again. They've long relied on data to help understanding where work is going. Microsoft has done this through an annual work trend index, as well as productivity signals from Microsoft Graph and labor market trends from LinkedIn. So what they're finding based on Microsoft's research is 64% of employees don't have enough time or energy to do their jobs. And the primary causes of this time and energy drain are things like searching for information and navigating inefficient meetings. Employees reported spending nearly 60% of their time on communicating and coordinating, just leaving 40% for creation, deep thinking, and collaboration. And oftentimes, it's worse for your very high value, high skilled employees. I can attest that I have been in a scenario many times where I've been on back-to-back meetings, following up on emails, and I get to 5 p.m. in the afternoon and I think, okay, well, I guess I'm going to try to get some real work done now, and I'll have to work another few hours just to stay on top of things. The volume of data and emails and chats has outpaced our ability to process it at all. We call it digital debt. About every minute spent managing the digital debt is a minute not spent on creative work. And creative work is being work that takes the creativity and experience and skill of an individual. In a world where creativity is the new productivity, digital debt is more than just an inconvenience, it's impacting business. Nearly 2 in 3 people say they don't have enough time and energy to do their job, and those same employees are 3.5 times more likely to struggle with innovation and strategic thinking. So a recent study found that 87% of leaders believe AI will give their organization a competitive advantage. The question every leader is asking themselves right now is, how will your organization seize the full potential of AI while safeguarding your business, your data, and your employees? How will you do this for your customers? Employees are starting to embrace the idea of using AI to support their work. In fact, 70% of employees are open to delegating some of their work to AI to lessen their workloads. And while for many AI-related job loss is at top of the mind, and it is at the top of mind, 49% of people are worried about the idea that AI is going to put them out of a job. But the data also shows that managers are looking to leverage AI to empower people, not to replace them. In fact, managers are 2 times more likely to say AI would be most valuable for boosting productivity versus cutting headcount. Organizations are ready to embrace AI in the workplace. What's this mean to you? And this image, by the way, is another AI-generated image. This person doesn't exist. I asked Copilot to create me a person with their hands up. They completely generated this image. It means people, companies, products, and services are all adopting and integrating generative AI. It is changing how they work and having a global economic impact. And just like the computer, just like the internet, just like the smartphone, if you don't take the time to also integrate it into your work, into your organization, you will find yourselves outpaced and at a disadvantage to those who do leverage it. So that brings me back to Copilot for Microsoft 365. Copilot is Microsoft's generative AI integrated into Microsoft 365. Uh, that is your data, your products, your services. Let me show you a quick video of how this works.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is powered by what we call the Copilot system, a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine. It harnesses the power of three foundational technologies: the Microsoft 365 apps, that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams, and more. The Microsoft Graph, that's all your content and context, your emails, files, meetings, chats, and calendar. And a large language model, or LLM, a creative engine capable of parsing and producing human-readable text. All accessible through natural language. It starts with a prompt from you in an app. Copilot pre-processes the prompt through an approach called grounding. Put simply, grounding improves the quality of the prompt, so you get answers that are relevant and actionable. One of the most important parts of grounding is making a call to the Microsoft Graph to retrieve your business content and context. Copilot combines this user data from the graph with other inputs to improve the prompt. It then sends that modified prompt to the LLM. You may be familiar with what an LLM can do based on your experience with ChatGPT or Bing Chat. Copilot takes the response from the LLM and post-processes it. This post-processing includes additional grounding calls to the graph, responsible AI checks, security, compliance and privacy reviews, and command generation. Finally, Copilot sends a response to the user and commands back to the apps. Copilot iteratively processes and orchestrates these sophisticated services to produce a result that feels like magic.
All right, so as the video explained, Copilot is working off of LLMs, large language models. This is all the data that it's trained on, so that's able to generate text, audio, images, etc., based on the input that you give it. While ChatGPT works off of OpenAI's LLM, Copilot instead works off of a specialized LLM built within Microsoft's ecosystem called Azure OpenAI, as Microsoft has a strong partnership with OpenAI. So when you work with Copilot, you're not working off the same LLM as ChatGPT. This is not simply a ChatGPT plugin to Microsoft apps. This is Microsoft's own LLM derived from OpenAI, built within Microsoft safeguards, and it works together with the Microsoft Graph, which is connected to all of your data inside Microsoft 365. The Microsoft Graph is basically the gateway to data and intelligence in Microsoft 365. If you've ever written a PowerShell script, and some of you may not have, for your Microsoft 365 tenant, you're likely using Microsoft Graph for whatever those actions you were trying to do in Microsoft 365. So when you interact with Copilot for Microsoft 365, you may ask it to do something or about something, and it takes that prompt and gathers context for it. Maybe the context is the emails that you've received that day. Maybe it's particular people or meetings or chats or files. And this context is what allows Copilot to give you relevant information about your data back. When you ask about your next meeting with Becky, you don't want to know about some random Becky on the internet. You want to know about the Becky you work with. Or when you ask about when's your next meeting, Copilot has the context to understand you're referring to your work meeting that's on your calendar, not the next time Congress is meeting. So ChatGPT, you had to build all this context. You had to provide it everything by hand. You focused on providing ChatGPT with all the information about what you're doing or who you are, what you're working on. You may have seen advertisements out there of people selling ChatGPT prompts that's paragraphs long of like, okay, tell it to act like this and this information about you, all just to get back the right results. But Copilot, it has all of this context already because of the Microsoft Graph. It knows your name, it knows your title, emails, calendars, meetings, contacts, chats. So you don't have to provide any of that information. And it's able to take all of that and go to the Azure OpenAI LLM and generate information or actions that you're requesting. And none of that information trains the LLM. So the AI model itself is not learning about you, which is good because if it did, then it would be able to repeat that information to other organizations, but it doesn't, so it can't. Nor does any of that information ever leave your Microsoft 365 tenant. So from a data security perspective, Microsoft has created a way for you to safely engage and utilize generative AI without sacrificing security and compliance. So let's take a look at some of the early findings. So Microsoft first put Copilot for Microsoft 365 to work internally across their sales, IT, HR, engineering, and marketing. It's the eat your own dog food tactic. Microsoft has always done this. They use things internally first before they release it out. And so here's some of the findings that they have here, and I won't read every single one on this list, but 87% of the users agreed that they were more productive. 79% were able to focus more on important work. 79% spent less time on mundane tasks. 81% said it allows them to spend less time searching for information. 73% said makes meetings more efficient. 79% says allows to spend less time processing email. 1 in 3 had greater than 30-minute time savings per day. Down at the bottom, you can see of managers, 58% said reclaim time for more important work. So when you take a look at all of this, a staggering 70% would still choose to delegate as much work as possible to AI to lessen their workloads, even with concerns about AI possible creating job loss, replacing them in aspects. They see the value. Employees know what's in it for them. The promise of relief outweighs the potential threat that generative AI poses to their job. Earlier this month, Forrester Research released a projected total economic impact report of Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will be happy to provide a link to this if you can't find it yourselves. Some of their key findings were top-line revenues increased, total expenditures decreased, new hire onboarding times were reduced by up to 30%. There was improvements in diversity, equity, and inclusion by allowing more diverse input into their work, a better work-life balance, a strong compliance and security using Copilot rather than non-approved generative AI tools like ChatGPT that employees would have otherwise tried to take advantage of for themselves. And that's a key thing to think about there too, is people are going to try to find ways to utilize generative AI to help them work on their digital debt. Now, are you going to provide them a way to do that provide safeguards and compliance within Microsoft, or are you going to just let them go and potentially cause security issues and compliance issues with that data? A rather humorous or amusing test that I find is that Microsoft does this the way the value of a product over a free lunch. Would you rather have this product, or would you rather us pay for your lunch every month or twice a month or weekly? Well, when offered the choice of Copilot or a free lunch, an average of 80% of users chose Copilot. 30% even say it would influence their choice of an employer. So it's a big difference. It's having real economic global impact, and it's having impact in the workplace, and it's making a difference for people in their day-to-day work. So let's stop with the presentation part, and I will move to a live demo, the part that you're really wanting to see at this point. Let me stop sharing this and share my screen. Share. Let me bring this over. So I set up a demo tenant, the customer CDX experience demo tenant. And I have loaded into this Microsoft 365 tenant E5 licensing. So now the licensing requirements for Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 is business standard, business, or M365 business standard, M365 business premium, M365 E3 or E5. Those are the recommended SKUs. Really, premium or higher is recommended, but you can do Office 365, the the non-M365, the O365 SKU, Microsoft licensing, right? So O365 E3 or E5 can also be compatible with Copilot for Microsoft 365, but there is a difference in security and compliance capabilities with those licensing, and we'll talk a little bit about the end on why I recommend Business Premium E3 or E5 and not anything lower than that. So in this tenant, I have E5 loaded, and for this demo, I'm logged in as Alex Wilbur. So this is who I'm going to be for this demonstration in here. And so one of the first things you'll notice, so I'm logged into a Windows 11 virtual desktop, works fine on Windows 10 as well. If I open Microsoft Teams, now Microsoft has really tried to make Teams a central unifying application. So running your chats and your calls out of here, your meetings out of here, integration with SharePoint, intranet out of here, OneDrive, all your team files. So they're trying to make Teams a central hub for all of that work. And so in Teams, they have a Copilot chat. This is probably going to be what's most closely associated with the Chat GPT experience, actually just being able to talk with generative AI in a prompt. So they've integrated it directly into your Teams client. And you can see here Copilot for Microsoft 365. There's other ways to get to it. You can get to it in a browser. If you go to Copilot for copilot.microsoft.com, you can get to it inside a web browser as well. See Copilot for Microsoft 365. And there is also a toggle button up here, and I want to briefly explain about that. There is Microsoft Copilot. So if I hit the web here, you see Copilot. There is no for Microsoft 365 appended underneath it. This you can get to now. If you type in copilot.microsoft.com, you can get to this. And there's even an application you can put on your phone. You can start using Microsoft generative AI now. It's just not tied into any of your corporate data. It's not tied into your Microsoft 365 tenant. This is like using Chat GPT, except most Microsoft 365 licensing covers the capability of protecting your personal and company data. So we see this little protected notification here, protected your personal and company data. What that means is that any information that you provide to the Copilot chat is protected for that session. It's not training anything. It's not leaving anything. If I said, hi, my name is Jeremy, I'm wearing a blue shirt and pink shoes, and I closed out the chat, went back to it, and asked, hey, what am I wearing? I'd be like, I don't know, I can't see you. Because it doesn't remember any of that information. That information is protected. So this is actually a good entryway for a lot of people to get started in their organization with working with a generative AI, is to use the Copilot chat that's protected. They can provide, if they want to provide PowerShell scripts, even if they put their credit card information, it's protected. It's not training anything. It's not going out anywhere. That session is forgotten the moment they close it out, or if they hit this little new topic button, it clears it out too. I have a video on YouTube, on the Safari Micro YouTube channel, that I demonstrate this in my M365 versus Copilot chat. And I demonstrate some of the differences between just plain Copilot and Copilot for Microsoft 365. So let's go back to Copilot for Microsoft 365. We're going to focus mainly on how Copilot interacts with your Microsoft 365 data. I'm going to go back into the Teams client here. So from a Teams perspective, from a Copilot chat perspective, you can talk to this AI chat just as you would with Chat GPT. You can say anything that you want here. You can ask it for ideas. If you want an idea for what are some birthday party ideas, you can even ask it that, and it's going to give you some ideas. But down here in the corner, there's a prompt book that they allow you to look, and you can see some of that too up here in the center. There's some prompts they suggest, but this prompt book is handy if you want some ideas on what can I ask Copilot, and they break it up into categories: catch up, create, ask. So I'm gonna do some demonstration. I'm gonna ask when is my next meeting with a particular user. So I'm going to ask, when is my next meeting with Megan Bowen? So Megan's another person in this M365 tenant. And if I put in that information. And the downside of a demo is you do have to wait for it to actually do its thing. So I'm going to try to keep talking while it's responding to these prompts. And there is a bit of time. Remember, it has to do all of that work that's in the background that was in that video. So it says your next meeting with Megan Bowen is scheduled for April 25th, 2024 at 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. And it gives me what the title is, meeting organized by Mark 8 project team, and actually gives me a link to that meeting here. So the nice thing about when it responds to you, it usually gives you links to what it's referencing, so I can pull up that meeting directly. You're going to see this disclaimer on anything ever artificial intelligence generated is AI generated content may be incorrect. And I'll talk a little bit about what are the cases that you really do have to worry about incorrect information. My findings in using Copilot since January, so for the last 4 months directly in my day-to-day work, is that pretty much all the stuff pertaining to your work data, to your work files, your meetings, all of that's accurate information. It's when you ask it something that it's having to rely on the internet or go out for any particular information, you want to fact check a lot of that stuff. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I can also ask what was my copy and paste the decision time. So what was my last communication with Megan? So it's going to be able to search through emails, my chats, and my meetings to find that information. Again, that's all in the Microsoft Graph. That's how it's able to access that information. So it says your last communication with Megan Bowen was an email exchange yesterday evening regarding the quarterly reports. Megan provided an update on key metrics showing positive trends and addressed a minor issue with data consolidation. She mentioned the implementation of a new data integration tool. Megan assured that she's closely monitoring the developments, and you can see, again, there's these references. So I can actually pull up these individual emails, and I can see exactly what Copilot is referencing when I talk about. So here's the email from Megan to Miriam and Alex, the person that I'm logged in with. So all of this information is correct. This is stuff that I was doing yesterday evening that it was able to tell me about. And you can ask it about various things that are in your tenant. So I'm not only asking about a person. I want to find out about Mark 9 project. So this is a project that is going on within this tenant. So Copilot's going to reach out and search for information regarding any mentions of the Mark 9 project. And then live demonstration. It didn't find any information on that. So I'm going to say, who is Megan Bowen? So this is actually to demonstrate that it can find information about specific people, what they're working on within inside Microsoft 365. And so it's finding their contact information. So Megan Bowen is actively involved in the Mark 8 project. Oh, that's probably why, because I listed it Mark 9. So my fault. Demonstrator's error. I called it Mark 9 project, Mark 8 project. Mark 8 project team focusing on the marketing sync. Megan also participates in meetings organized by sales. So it gave me this rundown about her. You can see, however, there is no explicit information about Megan's department, role, location, or reporting structure. So again, AI, just like search engines, etc., it's only as good as the data that it has. So I don't have any information populated about her department or her role or her location or her reporting structure, who her managers is. So Copilot can't provide me this information. So when you do look at integrating Copilot into your environment, which we'll talk about Copilot preparedness at the end of this meeting, you want to take in consideration, do you have this data populated within your environment? Because so that people can find the right resources if they want to find out who's involved in a particular project or who's the right resource for certain things. Is that information actually in there for Copilot to actually respond on? So I'm going to try this prompt again. Tell me more about the Mark 8 project now that I have the right name for it. So it's reaching out, coming through documents, emails, chats, I found relevant. Now it was able to return the right information. So the Mark 8 project is a significant initiative that involves the creation of Contoso Mark 8 quadcopter, which combines advanced quadrocopter technology and award-winning Contoso camera technology. So it found all that information, and it's referencing documents. So there's presentations, building the Contoso Mark 8, creating the Contoso Mark 8. So it was able to find these documents that were out there, and provide this information. Now, Copilot respects, and again, we'll talk more about this toward the end, but Copilot respects the boundaries of your data set. So if I did not have access to any of these presentations, it wouldn't tell me about them. So you can rest assured when you use Copilot for Microsoft 365 that it will respect the permission settings that you have on files and information that you have out there. That is good and bad news, because while it's going to obey the restrictions that you have out there, it also means that if you don't have those restrictions in place, then that's going to be able to divulge information to other people about things that they may not necessarily have access to. And while I'm here, I'll just go ahead and show that real quick, since we're already in the middle of this. So I'm going to ask what the latest is from Megan Bowen, organized by files, and I'll kind of give an example of this. I logged in as Megan yesterday, and I created a sensitive document that I created in its own document library. I didn't advertise that document library to anybody. I didn't put links to it on SharePoint. I didn't reference it anywhere, but I also didn't lock it down. So we can see in this list here, employee salaries spreadsheet, and a reference link to it. As soon as it's done generating this list, so it's going through. I asked, what's all of the files that Megan's been working on that I have essentially access to, and so it's able to give me this full list. But if I pull up this reference mark, employee salaries, because Megan, who I've logged in as, failed to lock down this information, even though she didn't advertise that information to anyone, even though she didn't make a public link to that document library, didn't list it on the navigation in SharePoint or anything, Copilot was able to send me a link to that, because as far as Copilot knows, I'm supposed to have access to it. And so now here I'm looking at salary informations and social security numbers for people when I probably shouldn't have access to that information. And that is not a failure on Copilot's part. That is a failure on the security and compliance of the end user being able to put those in place. So when we talk about at the end, preparing for Copilot, part of that is examining the security of your environment to make sure that sensitive information is locked down appropriately. Otherwise, Copilot's going to help people snoop into information that they shouldn't be, just because they technically do have access. I could technically go to that SharePoint site, drill down, and find that file myself if I was looking. So it's not Copilot's fault. It is the security and compliance standards of the tenant that I'm in. So you get the idea with Copilot Chat. Again, you can do personal information in here. You could add files in here and ask it information about a particular file. I have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to move on. But this is a helpful assistant with your work in regards to your data. So you can ask it about emails, you can ask it about presentations, you can ask it about people. One of the things that I've used it for is, as I'm entering into a meeting, I ask Copilot, hey, what is the last things that we discussed and what information that's helpful for me for this meeting? And so Copilot is able to give me a rundown to prep me for the meeting, because there's countless times where I've joined a meeting and I'm like, I don't know what we're talking about. The name of the meeting is very generic. I'm like, I don't remember the last discussion that we had on it, because I've had 50 meetings in the last day. So now Copilot is able to catch me up so that I have that information going into the meeting and I'm more productive. I'm not spending the first 10, 15 minutes of the meeting trying to figure out all that information or re-talking through things, because Copilot has already provided that information to me. So I'm going to head over to Outlook next. And so again, Copilot is not just a chat, it's integrated into each of your Office applications, the primary ones: Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, OneNote. And these integrations all have different capabilities. It's all the same Copilot Azure OpenAI instance LLM in the background. It's still all talking to the Microsoft Graph, but how it interacts and its capability in specific applications is different. So I'm in Alex's Outlook here. And if I'm looking at emails here, I can pick one of these emails. Some people like to organize their emails by conversation, so it's all stacked into one, and they can look through the history. I hate doing that personally. I like to have emails show up in order that they came in my inbox. But one of the downsides of that is I will go through and I'll pick an email and I have 50 emails ahead of it, and maybe there's been more stuff in that conversation. So like this, there was two more emails sent after this one in that chain, but I happen to notice this one. And so I have accidentally replied to emails where they've had further discussions, things were resolved, but because I paid attention to one that was further down in the chain, all of a sudden I'm responding to information that's already been dealt with. So one of the very handy things that I like to use is the summary by Copilot. So if you select this summary by Copilot, it will look through not only the existing email chain that you're looking at, but everything that's followed in that email chain, including new emails. And so it's able to generate a summary. So you asked Megan Bowen for an update on quarterly reports. So that's the first part of this email chain that you see here. Megan Bowen reported that the quarterly reports are progressing well. You asked for more information on which markets help grow revenue. Megan provided detailed information on that. And then Megan Bowen is closely monitoring situations and will have everything ready for Miriam Graham's review. So these last two statements here are from further up emails in the chain. So it's gotten me completely up to date on what's going on in this email thread, even though I'm not looking at the latest email in that thread. That's very handy information because now you can see exactly where that topic is going on. I don't have to hunt down. I'm like, oh, maybe there was 2 or 3 more emails and go hunt and search for them. No, I can just read the summary by Copilot. I'm like, okay, this is where it last left off. Megan is closely monitoring and getting everything ready. So good to go. I don't need to spend any more time on hunting and looking through emails regarding this chain. That summary by Copilot is one of the big features there. The other big feature is being able to draft emails using Copilot. So I'm going to reply here, and I see Copilot in my ribbon here. So I'm going to draft with Copilot. Drafting with Copilot pulls up this chat prompt that says, hey, what do you want this email to say? And so I can ask it to provide a response. Let's see, I want to provide information will update quarterly reports. Write an email asking for the latest updates now that has looked at the files. So I'm asking it to draft an email with these particular updates. And so it responds with this: I hope this email finds you well. I heard that Miriam has looked at the files and I would like to request an update on the latest developments in quarterly report. So I gave it one sentence and it was able to draft a fully fledged email out of that. And are there any new issues that we need to address? Also, please let me know if I can provide an assistance. Thank you in advance. So it was able to create a full email, and I didn't have to spend all that time thinking of the niceties to have to put into that, to format it well. Because if you ever responded to an email and just responded one sentence, that can be taken hostilely. That you're yelling at the person, or there's certain connotations with the way you draft emails. Well, now you can use Copilot to draft that email out to be a complete thought just based off of one sentence. And then if you want to add any changes, add a list of times I'm available for a meeting. And we'll see. I've never tested this prompt before, so we'll see what it adds into it. But you can change how the draft is created So there we go. To make sure that we're on the same page, I suggest that we have a meeting to discuss the report in more detail. I'm available for a meeting on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Let me know what works best for you. So it was able to add those additions, and I can keep modifying it. If I don't like what it says at all, I can hit regenerate, and it'll try again. It'll just do the whole thing over. If I do like it, I can keep it. Other thing that is really great about Copilot inside Outlook is this coaching by Copilot. So if you are a person, so I have pretty decent communication skills, and I like to spend a ton of time drafting an email. Maybe, probably, very likely, too much time drafting an email. And so there's two sides to that. Um, because I do spend a lot of time drafting an email, and sometimes I have to walk people through things in a written form, I typically need someone as a second pair of eyes on that email. I'm like, does this make sense? How did this come off of? And so I usually message, my VP of Technical Services or somebody else on my team to look over that email. Well, now I can have Copilot look over that for me, and it'll provide me feedback on my email. It says, be more assertive. The email is polite and respectful, but it can also convey more confidence and authority in the request and suggestion. The email uses phrases like, I appreciate, I would like to request, please let me know, and I suggest that sound too passive and deferential. So it provides suggestions, reader sentiment, create more urgency, clarity, use bullet points. So these are feedback regarding my email, which again is handy for my situation where I may have a long email that I need someone to look over. Now, someone doesn't have to waste time doing that. I can have Copilot do it. Or if people don't have that great of communication skills in their drafting emails, there's a lot of people that just don't have that email communication skills. Maybe their talking point is great. Maybe they can have a really great conversation, but on email, they're horrible at communicating. Well, now the coaching by Copilot can walk them through and like, maybe this email came off a little too this way or that way. Maybe it needs more aggressive. Maybe it needs to be more formal. Maybe it needs to be less formal. So all of that is really great feedback that you can get that will help them become better communicators over time. And it can avoid situations where communication was an issue. Countless amount of times I've been CC'd in email chains where one person says one thing, they mean one thing, and someone takes it completely different way, or vice versa. They're just trying to get an information out there quickly. Then someone took offense to that. So coaching by Copilot really helps to give the person feedback before they send an email out. It's that think before you send type of action. So a really great value from Copilot there. In addition to these things, which are really a huge amount of value, these are the things that I use daily. I write a ton of emails. I receive a ton of emails. So getting that summary, getting that coaching, helping me with drafting, those are the things that I use on a daily basis. But you also do have access to a Copilot ribbon here. It's very close to that same type of chat that we saw on the team side. And so if I want to ask it specific things about things that are in my email, like find the file that Megan Bowen shared with me. So now it's going to go through my emails and find that specific file and give me a link to that. So you can interact with the chat interface directly in it to get more context to help you understand emails. If you want to, here we go. Megan Bowen has shared several files with you. Here are some of the files and given me links to all these files. So instead of having to go to the search for attachments, look at each of the emails. I'm like, oh, this email has an attachment. What's the name of this attachment? I don't have to do any of that. I can ask Copilot, and it's given me all of the attachments that Megan has shared with me and links to them. So I can see a list of them here and go directly to them without having to hunt and peck through. So again, a giant time saver there. If I want to summarize emails, I need to keep going. There's a lot that I could show you on there. 10:44. So we got about 15 minutes left in this 1 hour. So I asked it to summarize recent emails where I was mentioned. So it's going to comb through emails. If you're like me, I'm CC'd on a ton of emails. Maybe those emails don't necessarily pertain to me, but I would like to know if someone specifically called me out. So yesterday evening, Megan Bowen sent an email to Miriam, and the subject was quarterly report, and the email Megan reported. So it gives me this information about that email where I was specifically called out in there. So very handy. Instead of using the search functionality, it's able to give me more of a natural response to help me get things done quicker. All right, so moving on from Outlook, I'm going to actually go back to Teams for another part. So this was the chat of what I was focusing on, but the actual Teams integration that I would like to talk about is during meetings. This is probably something that I use on the most, even over the email aspect, is Teams meetings. And I'm not going to pull up. This is actually on my side. I created a meeting between me and this fictitious user Alex, and I started giving like a pre-presentation that I'm giving you now on that meeting, just so that I could record it. So in a meeting, you can do record and transcribe in that meeting. And when you record and transcribe it, you can go back to that meeting and go to this recap tab. So this is a meeting that I had yesterday. I opened up that meeting and went to the recap tab. And now here I have AI generated notes. So this is all of the notes from that meeting. And so I can go through it and read here. Instead of having to listen through the entire meeting, I can get the rundown here of those points. And if I'm curious, if I want to hear what actually happened, I can click on a particular part of these meeting notes and it'll bring me to that part of the recording and I can play it. You can also see down here, it picked up like when Jeremy spoke, when Alex spoke. So I switched my mics back and forth so that I could have some of both. And so you can more easily navigate a meeting more efficiently afterwards to figure out the information that you want to know about by reading these AI generated meeting notes and getting exactly what you want out of it. And follow-up tasks. So it was able to identify the tasks that came out of that meeting. So Copilot chat prompts generate a list of 2 or 3 prompts for a Copilot chat demo. That follow-up task is for Alex. Word prompts generate a list of prompts for the Word application demo. That's Jeremy's follow-up task. Meeting report, send the report for an attending meeting. Follow-up email, that's for Jeremy. So it listed back and forth what the follow-up tasks are for specific people. And when specific people were called out by name, Jeremy wanted you. So not only do you have the meeting notes and the follow-up tasks, but you do have access to the Copilot chat here. So if you want to ask it more information, I still have some of these generated from yesterday. So you can ask it, suggest follow-up questions. So if you want to know after you had a meeting with someone, you want some follow-up questions to reach out to them with, Copilot was able to come up with some follow-up questions for me to ask Alex and for Alex to ask me. These were questions that were worth diving into more. If I wanted to generate a list of action items, I can do that here. This Copilot chat box is available live in the meeting. So I can't demonstrate that for you. It would kick me off this webinar if I opened up a live meeting to do that. But everything that you see here, you have access to while the meeting's going on. So you can actually ask it while the meeting's going on, recap the meeting so far, or what questions are unresolved. So if you want to know some of the things that you asked earlier in the meeting, before the meeting ends, you're like, oh shoot, what were we talking about? What were some of the things that we needed to discuss? We were talking about it earlier. Well, you can ask Copilot, and Copilot's able to find that information. You can also ask it about decisions. So this is helpful either post-meeting, say you want to go back a meeting last week and you're like, why did we make that decision? So I asked, one of the decisions I made in this fictitious meeting that I set up was I chose to focus on Microsoft Word before PowerPoint, and I gave reasons. So I went back into this meeting here and I asked, why was Word chosen before PowerPoint? And Copilot was able to go back through everything and figure out, okay, there's a reason why this decision was made. Word was chosen before PowerPoint because Alex suggested that they should focus on how Copilot can generate reports inside Word and then create a PowerPoint presentation from a Word document. So that can help you understand some of the decisions that were made by you or other people in that meeting, or something that's coming out in June that Microsoft announced is the ability to follow meetings. So, say you can't attend a meeting, instead of accept or reject on the meeting invite, you can hit follow. Follow will tell the person running to meet the meeting that they need to record and transcribe the meeting. And then Copilot will actually get the meeting notes, will get the follow up task, and give all of this information to the person that was following the meeting. So that person can go back and get a rundown of the things that were discussed. Even though they couldn't be in attendance, they were able to get the rundown of everything that happened. And then we're able to ask it about decisions that were made. Well, why did they choose to release this report? Or why did they put this project on hold? So very powerful stuff that helps with your meetings and understanding where you left off of. Because I have so many meetings, this has been a lifesaver. In fact, it's gotten to the point where when I have meetings that were before I had Copilot and I go back to look at them, I'm like, man, this is awful. I can't look at the recap. I can't find the meeting notes. I have to rely on my chicken scratch of meeting notes, which are horrible half-baked sentences and misspelled words. I'm like, I have no idea what I was saying. But Copilot can take those notes for you and do it with quality and help you understand and help talk you through decision points, and next and follow-up tasks and questions that you need to move forward from there. So all huge productivity boosters in your meetings, and going forward in communication. Moving forward from there, I'm going to hop into Microsoft Word. And 8 minutes. Okay, let's do this. All right, so Microsoft Word. I'm going to start with a blank document to start with. So Copilot's in the ribbon here, but I also have Copilot right here. So I can draft with Copilot, as you saw with the email, generating email. I can do that with an entire document here. Let me give it a prompt that I already read out. So I'm going to say draft an essay on the benefits of generative AI, including a list of statistics. So I'm going to generate this. It's going to take a bit because it's actually drafting an entire essay. So this is actually drafting a whole document, whereas an email it did a couple of sentences, or you can have it do longer. When you're document building, it can help you build 80% of the document. Again, anything with generative AI, you don't want to just create it and send it. It's not good to go right off the back, but it can get you 80% of the way there. That's huge in terms of productivity. It got you most of the way. Now you need to tweak it and adjust it to move forward. I actually use this. I was building a case study for using Azure Virtual Desktop or a virtualized VDI solution over traditional computer usage. And I had Copilot build out the report for me. And then I went through each paragraph and I adjusted it and put in statistics that I want. And that's a thing to pay attention to, is oftentimes when it does add statistics, you want to fact check those statistics because it'll put it in a way that sounds right, but it may not necessarily be right. So you want to go out and find the actual facts that it listed in there. But it is a good template because where it put it, where it was good as a supporting argument, it was spot on. That's the place you should mention a statistic. So I just had to replace it with a statistic that was actually real, that did support my argument in that specific area. So again, it gets you 80% of the way there, not 100%, but 80% is still huge, because what would I be doing now if I wanted to create this initially? I would be researching and I would dabble with them, like, how should I start this? How should the intro be? What's my outline for this? But instead, you can see here, it generated this entire essay on it, from opening to closing, and it included statistics here. So again, this is stuff that I'd want to fact check. And then I can make suggestion, or I can add suggestions or direction on how I want this generated result to be modified. So I want it more formal, or I want more examples, or anything like that. I can add it. I'm not going to do that because it takes a while, as you can see, for it to generate. So I'm going to keep it. But I can show you, once you have created it, now you can even use Copilot to rewrite something. Say you have an existing document where you wrote out a paragraph. You're like, I'm not really happy with that. It doesn't really sound professional. You can select rewrite with Copilot. So it's going to keep the same idea that you had there, what the information that you were trying to come up with, but word it in a professional manner. and fix any grammatical errors or anything like that that you have, or just rephrase it. Maybe you just don't like how it was originally phrased. Maybe it was all drafted well, but it's just going to come up with suggestions of different ways that you could phrase that. And you can actually see here that I have 3 different options to choose from on how that was replaced. And I can either insert this new paragraph below it, or I can replace that paragraph entirely. So you have the ability to rewrite. You also can add, you can have Copilot just continue writing where you left off. So it's going to take in context everything that's in the document. Like, okay, Jeremy talked about generative AI and this part. So if I hit inspire me, it's just going to keep writing based on the context of the document that I'm in. So it's just going to keep going from where it left off, what it thinks it would fit best in this particular section. And so now I was able to add that information directly into here. So if you're having writer's block and you're like, man, I feel like there should be more content here, but I'm not exactly sure how to approach it, you can hit that inspire me button and it'll keep writing and adding content specifically in the context of the document that you're writing. Another very handy thing in document creation is if you have data sets that are inside your document, to visualize them as a table. Often when you're creating reports and documents, to be able to have a table helps you more clearly understand the information that's there. And so just being able to highlight it and say, hey, put this in a table for me, that's a huge thing. And it's time consuming in itself. Being able to come up with those tables, what the headers of those tables should be, what information, how should that information be divided up. So now you can simply just select that information, hey, put it in a table, and it's going to put that information together into a table eventually when Copilot actually does this, which is not so bad considering the amount of time that it would take me to personally do this. But when you're giving a demo and there's 3 minutes left, I'm pressed for time. So you can already see it was able to take all that information that I had up here and sort that out. Technology, start year, start size, end year, end size. And it created those categories and divided that information up for me so I didn't have to go through and do that. That would take quite a bit of time for me to be like, okay, I should show this way. Instead, it was able to visualize that for me, and all I had to do was click a button. So huge benefit there. Another thing is you have access to the Copilot chat just like the other applications. And so if you want to find information about a document, this is really handy when somebody sends you a report or a document and you're looking through it. You're like, man, I would like just an overview of what this document's talking about. We'll summarize this doc. Again, I can type this myself. This is just handy prompts that it's suggesting at the top. So it's not a limitation of all I can ask. I can't just ask, or it's not that I can only ask these 2 things. It's just these are 2 helpful buttons that they see used a lot of the time. So I hit summarize this doc, and so now it's providing me with the main ideas of this document. What is the main idea? Generative AI, and it gave me that rundown of what it felt were the main ideas and talking points of this document. So very handy for you to gather a lot of information quickly. Another one is ask a question about this document, which I'm going to skip since I only have technically 2 minutes and I have more to show you here. So I could ask specific questions and be like, well, what's this particular statistic, or what's the main figure that I need to be concerned about in this document? It's going to come through that document and provide that information back to me. One of the ones that I played around with yesterday was what growth statistics are in this document, and was able to provide that information based on my question. So huge benefit there. If I before I head over to PowerPoint here, I'm going to show you this document. So again, same thing. I can ask Copilot information about this particular document. Again, I'm not going to go through the summarized piece because you just saw that on my previous document. But you can see that this is a fully fledged report that already has information in it. Why that's important, I'm going to show you. So if I go into PowerPoint, there's a lot of times when you are have to deal with reports, recorded reports, financial reports, or reports on POC, or whatever it is that you're doing within your industry. A lot of times you have a document and now you need to give a presentation on it. Yes, you could just screen share that particular document, It's not formatted exactly great for that. But now with Copilot, you have the ability to create a presentation specifically from a file. And so I'm just going to use the quick button for this. So I'm going to choose to create a presentation from that document that we were just looking at. And let me put this through. So it's actually going to pull up that document. It's going to look through the text. It's going to find logical ways to divide that up into slides. It's going to pull the images from it. And as you'll see here shortly, it's even going to give me the talking points in the notes of the presentation. So it's already outlining it here. It's giving me an insight into what it's doing. Here's the outline for the presentation I'm generating. So it's gone through that document and found all of these presentation points, and now it's generating those slides. So for me, I'm a big presentation maker. I'm quick at this, but still, I'm spending an hour or plus, often more, tweaking and building. Even to get to a rough draft is taking me, 45 minutes to an hour to get that initially. So now I can take this data set that's in my report, feed it into Copilot, and have Copilot generate this information, this presentation for me. And I apologize. We're going to go over time. If you have to drop, I am recording this. I understand people have busy meetings and life schedules. So I am recording this, and we will post this on YouTube and on our Safari Micro LinkedIn page. But if you can stick around, I'm going to finish out this presentation, and then we'll talk a little bit about at the end of Copilot preparedness. Again, I apologize for the amount of time this presentation's taking. All right. So here it built everything out. It gave me a title slide. It gave me an agenda for the meeting, introduction, project scope. And again, it's using images that were in my document. It knows to put them in. All the information that's on these slides are from that. So a lot of times when people are creating presentations, they'll put things that don't really matter, or the data or information, or some people will work off of templates. Templates are great, but it doesn't actually have any of the information that you need already in it. Whereas now Copilot has built out presentation from real data and given you, as you can see at the bottom here, the actual speaker notes talking points. So this presentation's already 85, 90% of the way to go. Now I can tweak it as necessary. So I can tell it to add a slide about, whatever I want it to add, or summarize this presentation. If I'm getting someone else's presentation and I want to know, okay, what in the world does this presentation cover? Then I can have it summarized, or I can have an organized presentation. Maybe I don't like the way this is laid out. Maybe it's better for this to be bunched in different categories. I can have Copilot do that organization for me. So all of these are huge time-saving, productivity boosting activities that Copilot does. It's not just a novelty. These are things that help save you time. Again, it took a few minutes to generate this entire presentation based off of a report of what would have probably taken me at least 45 minutes to an hour when you consider all the graphics laid out, all the information that it put, and all the talking points that are in. That's a huge amount of time saved in that. I'm going to jump over to Excel really quickly. With Excel, let me open up this data sheet. With Excel, you also have access to the Copilot prompt here. And so I'm going to ask it to copy a prompt over here. Let's do visualize the data. So when you're working in Excel spreadsheets, when you're working with data sets, if you want to quickly be able to graph it out, to visualize the information, you use Copilot for that. If you want it to make tweaks on a massive scale to the data that you have in there, I want this column bolded. I want this extra column added. So you can see that I asked it to visualize the data, and I can actually add this as a new sheet in here. And so now it's provided my visual graph information on a new sheet that I can use. So again, I'm not even sure. I'm not much of an Excel person. I'm not even sure I know how to do that outside of Copilot. But now I was able to do it with Copilot easily just by highlighting the information and asking it to visualize it for me. But again, I'm pressed for time, so I've done things like, okay, switch out instead of yeses here, switch it all with check marks, or bold this entire paragraph, or add these two columns. I can ask that to Copilot in natural language rather than these are activities I know how to do. I can go highlight that. I can go add a formula and add these two columns together. But now I can just simply ask Copilot and it's going to handle that information for me, handle those tasks. Again, saving you time, boosting your productivity. And then last thing I want to show real quickly before we move on to the last stuff is OneNote here. So OneNote, um, if you're like me, you've taken a lot of stuff in OneNote, maybe you've jotted down gibberish, you don't quite understand it. One of the handy things is you can go over the notes that you took and ask Copilot to summarize that information. So you can see that I accomplished that here. It says, according to the current section, those notes are from an Azure infrastructure webinar that took place on this day. So it was able to provide me a summary of my notes and help me understand it in an easy paragraph rather than me hunting and pecking through and figuring out exactly what I was trying to accomplish. Let me expand this bar, but Copilot, again, is in this ribbon, so you can select it just like the other ones. And then you can also have it help you be creative. So you want to draft a to-do list, or you want to list pros and cons. Again, there is a prompt book that you can ask it various ideas here. You want to understand data. You want it to help you conceptualize things. So it can help you in that note-taking productivity process when you're coming with ideas. What's the name of a seminar? What are my webinar talking points? What are different ways I could approach this? And so you can work directly in your notes and have Copilot help you in that creativity process in trying to come up with those things or understand notes and information that you have already taken and that maybe weren't done so well in the first place. So another great productivity booster, another helpful thing for Copilot to be done with. All right, so that's it for the live demo. And I do have videos out there, and I am creating more on the Safari Micro YouTube page that I spend time on each of these products. Right now, I have Word out there, but I will be adding more in-depth look at each of these products. So I will release those. So do subscribe to the Safari Micro YouTube page, and you'll see those videos come out for more of those demonstrations. But let me finish out this Copilot webinar with back to my slides here. Real quick about data security, I'm just going to play this video real quick.
Microsoft 365 Copilot works with the data security controls you have in place for file access, labeling, classification, and data loss prevention. Mario Rogers works for Violet Martinez, and both are on the same team at Contoso. Mario and Violet are also members in the same group working on Project Falcon. Now we'll start with Violet, who's been working with the procurement and contract management teams to sell their partner ReliCloud 1,500 Mark 8 quadcopters. And you can see the file is labeled highly confidential with restricted access, and it describes all the terms in the purchase agreement. Because Violet has access to the file, she's able to search for and find it in SharePoint and Microsoft365.com. And of course, Violet can also navigate to the file's location in the Agreements folder of the project site to find the purchase agreement. So now let's look at Mario's experience. Even though he's on the same team and working on Project Falcon with Violet, if Mario tries to search for the Contoso purchase agreement, he won't find it. And there are a few purchasing documents that he does find without sensitive information, but not the one that Violet's working on. And if Mario knows the location of the purchase agreement and tries to navigate to it directly, it just appears as an empty folder to him. And when Mario launches Word on the web and creates a blank document, then prompts Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the Contoso purchase agreement as a reference file. Because Microsoft 365 Copilot respects the file permissions of its user, Copilot also cannot access the purchase agreement. Now, if we switch back to Violet's screen, because she has permission to access the purchase agreement, she can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the file. And after a moment, you'll see it created a summary of the purchase agreement, and Violet decides to keep it. Then, data security controls for Microsoft Purview discover sensitive information found in the Microsoft 365 Copilot generated content. The document is automatically labeled as highly confidential, and policies are enforced to restrict access to the document.
All right. So you can see that Copilot adheres to the security permissions that you have set. So he showed the example of you can't find it in search. That means that Copilot can also not find it. You don't have permissions to that particular file. So as I stated before, it's highly important that you have the permissions properly set on your documents. You want that no matter what, because again, they can search for it, they can get down to it. So it's important that you have information labeled as sensitive, that you have DLP restrictions in place so that they can't share that sensitive data out if it contains private information, credit cards, and social security numbers, things like that. So you want to make sure you are having good data hygiene within your Microsoft 365 tenant, because when you add Copilot in, Copilot's just going to be the helpful tool that it is, the productivity booster that it is, and it's going to give people more easier access to that information that they technically do have the rights to see. So that's one of the things that Copilot preparedness is making sure that you have your proper data security restrictions in place inside your tenant, that you're properly labeling sensitive data if you have sensitive data, that you're setting permissions on SharePoint sites and document libraries. And not only from the data security side, but having good data hygiene in general means that you have files properly named and in the correct folder structures, that marketing material isn't under John's fun files. No, it's labeled under marketing. Things that are going to help Copilot be more efficient for your organization, so that when you do ask about marketing files, it goes, hey, I know there's this marketing folder, and here's the files that are contained within it, and here's the files that this particular user has access to. So there is preparedness steps that you want to take inside your Microsoft 365 environment for you to best leverage Copilot for Microsoft 365 to be the best tool for productivity boosting, at the same time making sure that your data is safe and secure. So those are the two main principles. There is security assessment, cyber hygiene inside your Microsoft 365, and then the data organization management hygiene to make sure that Copilot can leverage that information properly to help out your users. Those are things that we can definitely help out with. I will talk a little bit about in a moment. I did want to give you some quick information on Copilot itself. That the Copilot that I showed you at the beginning, again, you go to copilot.microsoft.com. You can use Copilot for free just to get interaction with generative AI. Again, that's not tied into your Microsoft 365 tenant. But Copilot for Microsoft 365 itself is a add-on license to your existing Microsoft 365 base licensing. So again, your base licensing is going to be, Microsoft 365 Business Standard, Business Premium, E3 or E5, or if you have Office 365, E3 or E5. And why I highly recommend Business Premium or higher, Business Premium, M365 E3, M365 E5 licensing is because of that security safeguard, making sure that you can do data sensitivity labels, so that you can do DLP policies to protect your data, to make sure that you can properly archive, that you can take Teams meetings and get the full usage out of recording, transcription, and AI feedback, to make sure that you get all the capabilities of Copilot for Microsoft 365 and that it's secure and compliant. I'd highly recommend Business Premium or higher for that. But again, you can have more limited capability and less security tools with some of the lower ones and still interact with Copilot for Microsoft 365. But it's all about getting the best bang for your buck out of that. And so you can see that $30 a month for that licensing. You compare that to the free lunch. People were willing to say that, yeah, even if you bought me lunch every week and say each of those lunches were $10 to $15, even though that exceeds the amount of Copilot, I would still rather have Copilot help me with my day-to-day work and efficiency over that free lunch. So real quick, I'm going to close with this, and I'm going to have Chris, my VP of Technical Services, just talk a little bit about next steps. If you're interested on moving forward with any of the stuff where you want to have more conversations, I'm happy to talk all day long about Copilot for Microsoft 365. Any questions that you have, even do private demos if you need another take a look at it. But here's some of the things that we can do. Safari Micro, we have a Copilot readiness program that we can help you with. Data security and protection. We'll review your Microsoft 365 and Azure security settings with a focus on preventing oversharing of sensitive data. We'll implement Microsoft's just enough access approach to ensure users have the only specific information required for their job. Data structure and organization. Our team will audit your Microsoft 365 content, including documents, emails, chats, and remove redundant, outdated, and trivial content. We'll organize your files and emails into logical folders and sites and tag them with appropriate keywords for easy retrieval. If you want us to, all of these are individual. We can help you with just data security and protection. We can help you with data hygiene, structure, and organization. Or we can just do access review permissions audit. We'll conduct a comprehensive review of permissions across your M365 environment, identifying any overexposed assets and tightening permissions where necessary. Data governance will assist in establishing data governance policies and practices related to Microsoft 365. And then training and change management. Training is another huge aspect of Copilot use, because just like the computer, just like the internet, just like all these tools that you can give people, you can hand it to them, but if they don't know how to use it, what good is it? So we can definitely help with training with AI, and so how they can get the most out of their AI. Things like there's a Copilot labs that we can take them through of here's how to prompt Copilot. Here's the things that you can ask. Here's the stuff that's going to help you day to day. We can help you set up an adoption team. We can train a trainer inside your environment that can be responsible for helping other people adopt Copilot in your own environment. So all of these things we're willing to help with individually or all together as one giant Copilot readiness package. That's something that you can talk to us about, and we would love to help you with that. So that said, I'm going to try to unmute Chris. Yeah, let's see. And allow camera if Chris, you want to come on. And then I'm going to let Chris just talk about how you can engage Safari Micro going on from here. Chris, can you
yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming first and foremost. Great job, Jeremy. That was really informational for me as well. If you guys want some help around Copilot, please reach out to your Safari Micro rep if you have one. If not, feel free to send me an email. My email is chris.day@safarimicro.com. And I'm happy to work with you. You could also send Jeremy or I a LinkedIn message as well. Along with Copilot, we also do a lot of infrastructure work. Some of you may or may not know that, mostly around Azure, Office 365, in the Microsoft stack. We can also work with on-premise infrastructure as well, your traditional Active Directory and Exchange. We also have a very good, robust networking practice at Safari. So please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. If you do want to book some of Jeremy's time to get really more into the Copilot, like I said, reach out to your Safari Micro account manager or reach out to myself. We're happy to help. Jeremy, I'll kind of pass it back over to you, let you take any questions anybody has. I know we're way over time, but I think this is good.
Yeah. If anyone does have questions, I'm happy to entertain them. Otherwise, we can let you go. But if you have any questions that you want to ask in the chat, I do have some videos out there on YouTube that you can look at, and I'm producing some more. But always happy. You want to email me or engage me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to answer those questions there as well. Not seeing any questions. Oh, is Safari Micro a preferred Microsoft partner? You want to take that one, Chris?
Yeah, we are. We are a Microsoft solutions partner. We used to be Gold. Now they changed it all. We are a solutions partner for modern work.
All right. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you learned something about Copilot and generative AI. And then Paul, where would we find the security-related documentation on Copilot in regards to what it can and cannot access? So,
I sent that over to Mike just a minute ago, Jeremy, on the questions tab.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can add to that if you want, but I sent over the trust documentation for how Copilot works and how its security is.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. All right. With that said, I think that's everything. Again, appreciate you guys' time. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. We
Glad
really
you enjoyed
appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
But have a great day. Bye-bye.